Hi, everybody. If I could have your attention, we're ready to start the meeting. Don't forget to help yourself to some, if it's still left, that delicious homemade pastry that Mariam brought in. So we're going to hear about birding in Armenia tonight, and at the last minute, Mariam asked me to introduce her. So I don't know a whole lot about you, except you're an excellent birder. Her daughter's an excellent birder. She did a presentation about I'm sorry, red cockaded woodpecker. That was very good. Yeah, about a year ago. Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind explaining a little of your background to everybody too, since I'm not totally familiar with it, and Chris also.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Have you started recording the Zoom?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Good. And I'll sit there and I'll eliminate by you doing it.
Okay.
The presentation actually will include sort of, so we can just go ahead and get started.
Okay. Okay, so since the birding adventures take place in Armenia, we need to figure out where Armenia is first. So how many of you were born in Armenia? One person, all right. Mariam, how many of you have been to Armenia? Nobody in the crowd here. How many of you have been birding or traveling anywhere in, say, a former Soviet Union republic? Nobody here has been to Russia or Ukraine.
Wait, where is it? Somebody did say they were in Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan, yeah, Jared's been to Kazakhstan. So where is Armenia? So you can see a little country circle there. And you can see that Armenia really is a crossroads. And so we have Europe, we have Russia, we have Asia, we have the Middle East, and there's Armenia right in the middle of it. It's got a stop on the Silk Road. It's a very ancient civilization. And so here's a little bit blown up map. We have here the former Soviet Union boundary. And so it is a former Soviet republic. But the Armenian people, sometimes they've been independent, they've had kingdoms. They were an independent republic for about 2 years, right after between the fall of the Russian Empire and the rise of the Soviet Union. And then they've been an independent republic since 1992. But you can see a lot of these countries around here, Russia, the Stans, Iran, Afghanistan. A lot of these are totalitarian, authoritarian regimes. There are wars being fought. Here's the part of Ukraine being occupied by Russia. And so it's kind of right in the middle of the big conflict zone. But it seems to be a stable country, probably one of the most democratic regimes in the region. And so, oops.
That went backward.
Why is it going
Still
back?
going backward. I don't know. You want me to do the arrow?
Yeah. There we go. Okay, so here we zoom in and we can see that there are 4 countries that neighbor Armenia. And we have Turkey, Iran down here, and it's very close right there. We have Georgia, and then a long border with Azerbaijan. And then Azerbaijan actually has an exclave here called Nakhchivan. These are both part of Azerbaijan, but the only way you can reach this is by going either to Romania. And this actually had been on the news. Trump was trying to broker a corridor. We'll see how that works out. This map also has Armenia is divided up into 11 administrative districts called, each one is called Mars. And so including Yerevan. We actually managed to touch every single area of Armenia on the course of our trip.
Okay, so this is your laptop. You got to figure it out.
It's doing it sometimes. So just to give you a sense of how small Armenia is on the world stage, here I've put it in the same scale as Pennsylvania. So you can see from north to south, it's pretty much the same as the north to south border of Pennsylvania. If we kind of took the area and squished all the west, it would be about the same area as the westernmost 2 or 3 counties. I made a map once that has all these maps here, that all these counties here, that is pretty much about a quarter of the size of Pennsylvania. And we spent 3 weeks doing that. If we actually display the map so that the latitudes are consistent, you can see that Crawford and Erie County are further north than any part in Armenia. Yerevan, the capital, will be a little bit south of Pittsburgh, and then the southeast portion would extend about to Washington, D.C. So that gives you an idea. It's about the same latitude as here, but it's much drier because southeast or southwest of here, we have the Gulf of Mexico. Southwest of there, if you look at the previous maps, they got Saudi Arabia in the desert, and so they get that dry air. So why did we burn in Armenia?
Well, obviously, the main reason is because I was born there and my daughters were born there, and so we tried to go to chance again, to go to the camp, which is not bad. But you know, Chris and I have been together for over 3 years now, and he hasn't been there yet. So there are a lot of references that I keep using that he just could not understand. Other reasons include facts that it's extremely diverse, despite being a tiny country. You know, it has a whole lot of different ecosystems, you know, and we will show them as we go through. It's ancient. There's a whole lot of culture to be seen, a whole lot of art. I mean, those ancient monasteries going back to, you know, early medieval period, and there are some that are way, way older than that. And then the food is really good. So, I mean, to me, that's very important. But the food is really good. So here's more maps and some more Chris.
So I made a bunch of maps with the topo or the satellite views taken from Google Earth at the boundary, and you can see the white lines represent the Mars boundaries. And so this area was settled before 3000 BCE. And they think that the people that live there now are the same as the indigenous people that lived there then. There's been a lot of admixture, people from other, at times Armenia has been ruled by Arabs, by Persians, by Indians, by Mongols, by the Russians, by the Turks. But there have been people settling this area and former Armenian areas to the west for about 5,000 years now. The city of Yerevan was founded in 782 BC. So it's considered one of the oldest continuously occupied cities in the world. It's older than a lot of other places. It sits at about 1,000 meters elevation, so that's about 3.3 thousand feet. And I'll turn that back over to Mariam.
So now he knows more about Armenia than I do, of course. So 2 things. First of all, you know, the whole genetics of, you know, us being the descendants of the ancient people. When my daughter ran her the DNA thing.
23andMe.
Yeah, it came back as, you know, part Asian as Asian. There you go. The cuneiform tablet is actually the birth certificate of Yerevan, you know, the 782 BC, that's what it says there. I, King such and such, born in. So, enough history, I think. Let's go birding. So, just a few views of Yerevan. Again, I can talk about this for hours, but this is not what the presentation is about. So, moving right along. More views of Yerevan. I will hand it to you in a second, but you know, there are birds in the city more and more as, you know, they're sort of starting to get more cleaner air there. So
this is one of the first birds we encountered. They sound similar to the American crows that we have here. There's a bird in Europe that I was familiar with when I lived in Germany called the carrion crow. It was all black and it looked and sounded a little bit bigger, a little different voice, but you knew it was a crow. What's really cool here is I'd only seen these maybe once in Germany along the North Sea Islands. They have what's called hooded crow, and they were considered one species until about maybe 30 years ago or so. And then now they've been split off, and they're very attractive with that gray hood, and they otherwise sound similar.
Some of the other things you'll see in the city is magpies, chaffinches, wagtails, etc. But we will go over that. So relatives, good food, etc. Notwithstanding, of course, we went birding. One of the first places we went was that long word over there, pronounced Itzernakavet, it actually means Swallow Fortress. It's a big park on top of a hill, and it has a big concert hall, which is not included, but also the Genocide Memorial, which is what you see here. Park is around it. If you want to talk about it more, ask me. We're not going to talk about that right now, but we did go birding there on like the first full day we were in Yerevan, and that's us birding.
Wow.
And here is a bird that you could easily find in the city, among others, a hoopoe, and it's like, this ginormous butterfly flying around, and it has the most extreme sound too, the hooting, almost like yeah. So the diversity, just so you'll get a sense of it, right here in, say, where we live right now, we have pigeon and the dove. And, you might find some other doves in other parts of the United States, but in Yerevan alone, you can find 3 or 4 different kinds of doves, right? Plus the pigeons, plus the domestic pigeons. And as far as shrikes, there are 6. So identifying them just right, off the top of your head, it's quite a task. And this is the other birding location in the city that we visited. It's an urban lake, sort of, smallish, and it has the distinction of being right next to the American Embassy. So we were told in no uncertain terms that not only you shouldn't be taking photos of it, don't even look at it through the binoculars. So we're just ignoring it all the time over there. But we did see a lot of other things in that lake. We saw bitterns for, what it's worth, 2 bitterns flying. Didn't have a chance to take photos. And just a general view of what you might see there. There were just platforms, I don't know what they are. But an interesting observation that suddenly popped into my head there is, how when you let's say learn a new language and you're trying to speak it, and you form the sentences in your native language first, and then you have to translate it word by word. The same thing was happening here. You look at this and you're like, oh yeah, there was great blue hair and a couple of ringtail or herring gulls. Oh wait, no, this is actually gray heron, and those are Armenian gulls. And so, oh, and by the way, double press it, no, they're pygmy cormorants or great cormorants, and so on. And it just went on for a while. And then another thing I'm just gonna sort of insert it right here is initially, that very first day at the park, we were just overwhelmed with those sounds because, here I can make a checklist with like 8 species before I even get out of bed without seeing them, just by sound, And then, I could be wearing my reading glasses, I see like this big blobs, and I still know what bird that is flying out there, just the way, the color, the behavior, the bird. There, all of a sudden, there's cacophony of sounds that none of us knows. Maybe Chris knows a few of them.
Yeah,
From
it
Europe.
had been 15 years since I lived in Germany or visited Germany, so I had forgotten a lot of them.
How are we ever going to sort all this out? We did, but it took a minute. So, some other city birds for you. There are white storks over there, perched on top of whatever that tower is. Actually, there's a nest there. Another Armenian gull, this one is a juvenile. And what else do we have?
Oops.
Okay, there you go.
So after 3 days of birding and visiting culture stuff and doing some shopping and getting our wedding rings, after doing all that, we headed out then for about 2 weeks and went around the country. And so each time I show these maps, the red is kind of where we've been so far that day or where we're going that day. And then I'll have where we've been so far the whole visit, I'll have in pink. So you'll notice that I said Yerevan was 1,000 meters. This area here is called the Ara Valley. These are some highlands. This is the highest point in Armenia, Mount Aragat. And then there's some more mountains up here. It's a little bit greener, mountainous. Very, very mountainous country. But it was very, very hot. And it was about 96, 97 degrees every day. And you don't need a weather forecast. We figured out it's gonna be sunny, we did not see a cloud in the sky until we traveled about here, about a week and a half into this trip. So,
We're like, look at that.
yeah, look at the cloud. So we traveled down to one of the premier areas, we'll call Mariam tell you about, called Armenia. Oh, just one thing, I don't have it on this map, but this is the border on that previous map. Right here, this is Nakhchivan, which is part of Azerbaijan, which they just finished fighting a war with, and you're about a mile and a half from the border if you're in the wetlands there. This is Turkey here, and you're about a mile and a half from the border there. And then a little bit of Iran sticks up, and you're about 3 miles from that border. So as you can imagine, it's a regulated area.
So while he's changing the slide, you can imagine that it took some convincing to even, organize this trip because it's like, that's too close to everything. No. So Armenia, that's a general view, and just while we're on the slide, that mountain back there, you probably heard about Ararat Mountain, it's mentioned in the Bible, no land in the middle, that's Ararat Mountain. It's on the other side of the border now in our, historical Armenian land, but it's there, it's basically the symbol of our country anyway.
The symbol of the country is not in the
Not
country.
in the country, yeah, so let's move on. So this place was built during Soviet times, they were going to raise carp there, probably did. It got bigger and bigger right on the border. Like you mentioned, it's the only valley in the country, so it sort of suits tourism. And the other thing that happened during my lifetime actually is Soviets were really, really cavalier with like the environmental stuff, conservation, etc. The motto that they were trying to teach us, me growing up, was the man is the king of the nature. So they basically tried to destroy everything just to increase production and whatever. And so that lake there that you saw, Lake Sevan, they were drying out the marshlands around it. They were lowering the lake just to create more land, more arable land for agriculture. And so this place, by default became like a concentration of migratory and breeding water birds, ducks, shorebirds, etc. The problem is, of course, that they are raising fish here, and those are all fish-eating birds, and so there was a lot of conflict going on there. And even now, since independence, the now growing body of conservationists and biologists and basically thinking people are working in an uphill battle with the owners of this place to say, hey, yes, you're going to lose some fish, but hey, look at all these people that are ready to pay you money to come in. Please, let's do this. And so now they're doing it. Fingers crossed. Another general, so early on we understood that pretty much every urban location in Armenia is going to have several things for sure. There are going to be dogs. There may be stray, they may belong to someone, but they're going to come with you all the way and then back, and they're going to be very friendly. There are going to be cows for sure, and there are going to be some wagtails, and there are going to be at least one shrike, probably 5. Once again, one of those views where, those are some snow egrets and great egrets, and no, wait a minute, and that's not a black neck stilt, that's actually a black winged stilt, and those are little egrets, but this is just just all the biodiversity. And no, it's not a Wilson's plover.
Wilson's snipe.
Wilson's snipe, sorry, it's a common snipe, and so on and so forth. One of my favorites over there is squawka heron. It's about the size of our green heron, but just quite different color. Another medium bow, and here you go.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. At home, they're getting the presentation mode for Zoom. Let me get rid of this. I'll show you what I mean. That's what they're seeing
Right.
instead of
why?
just the screen.
Oh.
Yeah, and I don't know anything about.
Are they seeing his screen or the main
They're
screen?
they're seeing my shared.
Yeah, they're
screen.
seeing that, and then they're also seeing some stuff off to the side.
Right. Sorry, I know what I did. Let me go back to Zoom.
I thought they were supposed
Actually,
to
let me go.
That was one corner of the screen, and then there was he fixed it here. There was
it's good now. Whatever
It's-
you did, it
it's-
works.
It's better now. Yeah, I think
Wait,
this.
why am I not in the Zoom? back to meeting, where's that? Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you. Thank you. It's not going back to meeting.
You can click out.
And then just join back in.
You are, no, you are in the meeting. Just
Oh, I click on. Yeah.
presentation, I think.
Here's what I want. I want. No, what I need to do is oh, here we go. Let's stop sharing my screen. That's what I need to do. Then I need to go share again. And this time I need to make sure that I do just the,
Share during the first.
yeah, that's where I goofed up. So let me go
The
in.
slides are showing off to the side here. I don't know if you, no,
There you
now
go.
this is what it looked like before.
That's good or not? No. Whatever. Anyway, sorry about that. So,
Did you take all the photos?
yeah, so, oh, that's something to mention. So all, at the beginning, on the beginning slide, the photo credits are, 90% of these are, taken by, Mariam's daughter, Roxy. It said RX Ohanjanyan. That's her daughter who gave a presentation about the red-cockaded woodpeckers. And why am I getting this thing and why is it not disappearing? It's not showing up on my screen.
Yeah, it's just showing up on this screen, but not on the video.
That thing's just completely
So
horrible.
while he's figuring that out, yeah, so you saw probably on the photo that there were three of us on this trip. It was also my daughter, and she's an ornithologist. She said she had a presentation for us about a year ago about the woodpecker in Florida. And so, you know, she took most of this photo. She has
There
a
you
much
go.
steadier hand and a better camera.
And you know what? It's good on the screen now too.
Oh, good.
Yay, yeah.
So,
But she said, this one viewer from home said, hey, you skipped over the cow picture.
How did he? Yeah, who's that? That's worth seeing. Yeah, thank you. Now that's why we need to have
There
this
you
so
go.
that people at home. So this was our introduction to the Amish fish ponds. Even before we got in, there was a little owl sitting there on the telephone pole wire, unimpressed with us in the middle of the day or early morning, ready to sort of sit out the heat. So here's one where you can notice, if you know the scientific names, the left one is Tringa, and that's related to our yellow legs. And this is a red shank, and there are red shanks and green shanks. And if they occurred in North America, we would be calling them red legs and green legs. And they're essentially similar species, except for their legs are red and green instead of yellow. Similarly, with Western marsh harrier, we have the genus is Circus. That's the same as our northern harrier. But again, we have one harrier species in North America. We saw three, and I think we probably missed at least one or two while we were there. And that's a Western marsh harrier. Okay, so the Eurasian bee eater is featured in our title. That's one of the birds that I wanted to see. I've seen it before in Germany, but they're kind of more common in Eastern Germany. And I was fortunate enough to live in southwestern Germany and visit there a lot. And there was one spot where I knew where you could find them. This is, sort of before e-birding community and all that in the late 90s. And yeah, I only saw him a couple of times. And so even though this wasn't a lifer for me, it was kind of like seeing an old friend. And unfortunately, I don't have any good sound recordings that I was able to get, but they were around all over the place.
they were in migration, and so they were everywhere.
And so we found like 60 of these over our whole trip on like 24 checklists. But there were a lot of times we were stopping in places and you'd hear them. They were migrating. You caught them right at the, oh, more like 600. Yeah, 600 that we just counted and submitted. Oh, I have them down here. 358, sorry, and 24. And we heard and saw a lot more. So pretty much everywhere we went, whether we were in a mountain area, whether we were high up on the mountains, whether we were in a semi-arid town, we had bee eaters all the place. And they have more than one species. Besides the Eurasian bee eater, we saw these blue-cheeked bee eaters, very colorful. I showed you a female red-backed shrike earlier. That's what the male looks like, and that's by far the most common shrike. They were pretty much at every stop too. And then any wetlands areas that we stopped at, we had Eurasian pindaline tits, which used to be grouped in with our titmice and chickadees and stuff, but they're considered in their own old world family now.
So anybody who has an apiary in Armenia actually does not like this bird. There's a whole lot of conflict again because the beekeepers feel like this is competition. Oh, they eat up to 800 bees a day. I don't know about that. Pretty much any photos I've seen, they are eating dragonflies and other flies and all kinds of insects, not just bees. But this is yet another thing we're sort of checking off all these things where education is needed and it's happening, but maybe not enough. Same as here, but probably some years behind.
I've labeled, there are about 12 species that we saw that are conspecific with the North American counterparts until they split them. There seems to be every year, like the goshawks and a lot of birds, they're splitting between Western and Eastern Hemisphere. But we saw black-crowned night herons there, and it's considered the same species. What you'll notice if you look at the scientific name is you'll see a lot of scientific names during the presentation where the names repeat. Because a lot of these is just one night heron there. There's no yellow crowned night heron. So Linnaeus or some other early bird or naturalist describes this, and they come up with a genus name because maybe it's something they haven't seen before. It's unique. And then they're like, oh, what do we call? Well, there's only one of them in the world, right? And then, of course, they get to the rest. So we also have white stork is Ciconia. Ciconia, if you keep an eye out, you'll notice that pattern a lot. That's a good trivia question. I don't know the answer. We know of one that we thought of. And hinga.
That's the bird in Florida. That's like what is it, like a snake?
Water snake, yeah. A lot of larks over there. So there's like, warblers here that have just migrated through, those confusing fall warblers. You come here as a visitor from over there, and there's like pages and pages and pages of these things. And then there's a fall page, like 3 pages where they all look alike. There's a lot of birds where we just have 1 or 2 representatives in North America. And then there's like 5 or 10, or even like in Germany. I would open the bird book. Oh, there's the 1 or 2 that we're going to see here. And then I'd ignore the rest of the stuff. Well, here you got to flip over to those 3 pages where there's like plates of like 6 or 7 species that you can expect. So we saw crested larks, and then we saw a lot of not a bird things. There's a frog. This is one of the many duck species that we saw. This is a common poacher. It's basically like instead of a redhead and a canvasback, distinguishing between those, so they just got one. It has a red head, so there's the drake and 2 hens. And the head kind of looks like a red head, but the body is more that brighter white like a canvasback. So it's got kind of mixed attributes. Yeah, question.
Would it be a bit more comfortable with less of the right?
Oh, sorry. Okay.
That's for pointing out something.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so then we headed down to Corvarop, which I'll let you, or actually, we retraced our steps a little bit, and I'll let Mariam tell you about that.
So, like I said, the trip was meant to include both birding and, some cultural expeditions. And so rather than talk about them, which is topic for a whole different presentation, I just put this little postcards in once in a while of things we saw. So if you have any questions, talk to me later. But one thing I'm going to say about this one is that pretty much any big church, monastery, etc., that you will find in Armenia is also a fortress. It's due to our history. There were a lot of invasions by our neighbors, both from south and from east. So, nearby villages would just run into these places behind the walls and feel safer. So you'll see some of these, and I'm not going to talk about each one of them, but historical, cultural significance, and also pay attention to the dates. They're all very, very old.
Yeah. Yeah, so Armenia, we should give some background on the religion since this is a monastery. Armenia is the first official Christian as the state religion country in the world. That was declared around, what, 300 something? So before Rome, 301, yeah. And so before Rome, and so you find a lot of these monasteries. We visited places that were 5th, 6th century. This one's 7th century. They're much older than the same counterparts that you would find in Europe. And so the church is it's an Orthodox church, but it's their own away from the Russian Orthodox or so on. So it's the Armenian Orthodox Church. And each of these grounds where we're stopping mainly for the cultural things, there were birds around there, there were trees, people had settled there, for a while. And so this was one that is a warbler, but it's an old world warbler. And it's one of these things, there's pages of them and they all look the same. And this is one of the few places where we saw the eastern olivaceous warbler. Okay, so we had spent a week and a half at this point, or about a week, in really hot, sunny, just unbearing heat, although it was a dry heat. And so we got up early morning after we stayed overnight, and we went to a gorge area that was the first really nice, cool morning. We didn't have just like a half-hour window where it was like 70 before the sun came out and got hot. We actually had a few hours where it was really nice. And I'll let Mariam tell you about Norhunk.
Well, first, before going there next morning, we spent the night in a place called Armenia, which is the heart of the winemaking region. Armenia makes really, really good wines. By the way, I highly recommend. But we didn't drink because I was driving. None of these people drink like that. So next morning, yes, we did go. It was just about 10-minute drive from the village. This gorge, which this amazing red cliffs. Yet another postcard. Not going to say anything about it, but this is just how deep the gorge is, right? And that's why the sun rises there quite late. And actually, there's stone mass that keeps the heat away. And that's my daughter and Chris just
cliff and another cliff,
burning and hearing sounds. And that's girls with cameras. Just in case you were wondering, I was there. So if we keep going on, some of the birds there. Were the ones that we didn't see anywhere else, like these blue rock thrushes. They're basically like really active blue robins, really loud, really just charismatic. I really wanted to see them, and I was thrilled that we finally found them. And I'm gonna.
You'll notice that a lot of species have rock in their name, and they're found, on species that are more arboreal in other places. Their relatives are, but these species are on rocks
because most of the country is basically rocks. We really should have called this presentation "Birds on the Rocks," with a twist. And then this is the other real highlight of that morning. Chukar is found here in the States, but it's an introduced game bird or an escaped pet at best. There it's native. And so we first saw them because the whole covey of them decided to fly right across our car. And then, they went up the cliff just chattering. And then we kept hearing them, and there are echoes in the canyon, and they're just talking to each other from both sides of the canyon. And they're like, so it was amazing experience.
We saw a number of wheat ears. This one's Onanthe, again, a repeated name. I think this species breeds like on Greenland and like Western Alaska. But in this area, in Armenia area, I think we saw 4 species of wheat ears, and there's ones that we missed. This one's by far the most common. Do you know what wheat ear, how it got that name? It means in medieval Middle English or something like that. It means white arse. And so they basically have a very prominent white rump, which you can't see in these photos, but when they fly off, it's real distinctive. And then here's one that we saw, Persian wheat ear. I'm pretty sure this is the only place where we saw them. So after birding in Noordwijk in the morning, our goal the rest of that day was to head more southeast. But after we've been traveling a little bit, we wanted to stop. That's a very dry area of the country still. And you can see that in the hills here in the background. But if you have a river coming out of the mountains, that's a riparian, sort of oasis area. And so Mariam found this birding spot.
So, yeah, I did study some birding guides online before we went because I never really birded in Armenia. I was more like a bug girl when I was growing up. So, and I did want to include at least one riparian habitat, right, by the river. So on the map, it looks really simple. You just leave the highway and you turn right, and then you go a little bit and there's the river and maybe even a bridge. But really, first thing you see off the highway is you get into this traffic, first of all. Then, as we've continued,
More traffic on the ground.
well, the thing is, it wasn't exactly what the map showed. It was a private property. They were landed right by the bridge, which was a pedestrian bridge. And by the gates of some private property, I was like, well, this might be a problem. We might not be able to bird there. Thankfully, the owner of that property, and it was a house, but it was also what they call a rest area in Armenia, and that's like, you can book it and go there with your whole family, extended family actually, and spend a day there eating, playing, fishing, doing whatever. It's like this recreational zone. And so he opened his gates, he invited us in. He was thrilled that he can talk to us about birds because nobody in the village wants to talk about birds with him. And he was like, he treated us to some fruit from his tree and he showed us around. And it was just, and his property was amazing. It was right on the riverbank. And so we saw 3 different kinds of wagtails there, actually. The gray one didn't post for photos. We saw some other really nice, and these clowns here. Why don't you talk about them?
How many of you have been out west and seen bush tits in North America? Little gray birds that are found, Jerry has, found along the west coast. They're in the same family. I think they used to be in the same genus, but they've kind of moved the bush tits off on their own. But these are called long-tailed tits. And the bird itself is actually, the body is smaller than a chickadee. It's like kinglet size with that long tail. So the measurement comes out longer. And what they do is they sit around in flocks and they kind of forage in the bushes. And then we're kind of done with an area. And if they want to fly across an open area, they all kind of communicate. And then finally, after a lot of excitement, one takes off and flies across, and then the whole flock flies after them. You see these tiny little ping pong balls with fluffy birds with long tails flying after them to cross an open area. This was a target bird for all of us. It's a magnificent, it's about blue jay size. It's called a blue roller. This one is molting, but they're very noisy. And actually, we didn't see that many. We only saw maybe 2 or 3, I think.
Yeah.
But this is just, yeah.
Zoomed in and crops on the quality, but I mean, they didn't really come close or closer for the.
Yeah. But that was a target bird and it was exciting to see. So we got to our destination, and then the next day we kind of backtracked so we could be at this spot early in the morning. Notice now that we're getting up in elevation. We're up at 1,700 meters, which is like about 5,300 feet, 5,400 feet. So you're getting into the foothills of the Rockies with that elevation.
So, Karahunj, also known as Armenian Stonehenge, is Zeratz Karer is the other name. It means rocks with power or something like that. It looks like this. Of unknown really purpose, but this holes in the stones made people believe that at least scientists believe that it may have been a Neolithic astronomical observatory. May have been that, may have been a sacrifice site, may have been a discotheque for all we know. We don't know. We really don't know. All we know is that it's an amazing place. Those rocks are all covered in this multicolor light, and birds love perching on them, so there you go. What I didn't know, however, is last time I was there was probably about 15 years ago, and there was absolutely no fence and no gate. This time there was both, and now they charge admission, which is great, except it was closed when we got there. It's like 7 o'clock in the morning, right? So however, what do you call it? The
Guard.
Native American telegraph system works. Somebody saw us parking there,
Yeah.
called somebody in the other village and said, hey, there are guests over there. So somebody drove over and said, oh, I don't have a key.
Oh.
And I said, well, fortunately, we have to continue on. And here is our American who never seen this. He has to, so he was like, well, I'll tell you what, there is a place in the fence when there's a hole and you can climb under. So this is one of the security guys, actually, right? He's like, you can climb under the fence, just don't tell anybody I sent this. Sure, so we climbed under the fence and there you go. We actually did explore those rocks and took some photos with them too.
And we did pay the admission post visiting on our way out. Yeah, I think so. We get some money. So here's another species that we were surprised to see this because it's a very open area. I'm used to thinking of goshawks as being in forested areas. Maybe this one was migrating. I don't know. This is another species that I think just last year, 2 years ago, was considered conspecific with our northern goshawk, which is now called American goshawk. It's the same genus. They've changed it to Astor instead of Accipiter and so on. And so quite a magnificent bird there. And here's some more birds on rocks. Windchats, kind of an old world flycatcher. We did see a few other species of shrikes besides the redback. This is a lesser gray shrike, similar to our loggerheads and northern shrikes. So then after we were there in the morning, we went to backtrack to where we're close to where we're staying to a place called Tatev. And so now we're up 1,550 meters here.
So here we have another medieval monastery. This one was quite significant culturally. There was a school there, they taught arts and history and so on. Again, a fortress. Now, and to get there, you have to cross this gorge somehow. So I have been down that road and up to the monastery, I don't know, about 20 years ago. And it's not easy, especially for someone who has motion sickness like me. You arrive there, you're completely going around the gills. Nowadays, there is this transportation method, an aerial tramway, which is why don't you read that?
It's the longest reversible aerial tramway built in only one section, and it holds the record for the longest nonstop double track cable car.
Huh.
And it was, and so they finished it about 15 years ago, and it's a major tourist site now. Even though it's a long, long way, it's about as far as you can get from Yerevan. But we saw people from all over the world there.
And now it takes only 15 minutes to get there from the nearby village, the village that's on the highway. So you're in the park. So some informational signs with the obligatory dog, which, there were at least one. And that's Chris trying to figure out if he qualifies.
They said I was too tall. I didn't get to go. See, they let her go.
He didn't qualify for a child's ticket, but go he did. And this is a little video of just how high we are there. And it's not long at all, but if you're afraid of heights, don't go.
They actually have, we turned off the sound, but they have in Russian and Armenian and English, they have
some information.
Somebody narrating information. They do the same narration and all.
Maybe I should mention that the gentleman who sponsored this and made it happen is now a political prisoner in a neighboring country. And so they were talking about that as well.
Yeah.
So
this is a bird that was definitely a target bird, and Roxy was the first one to spot it. And she said, I just identified it by its size. It's got a wingspan of 9.2 feet. It's one of the largest birds in the world. It's a little bit smaller than like a California condor or an Andean condor. I'm about 6 feet tall, so this is like another half of me.
Wow.
If you compare it to a bald eagle, it's got a wingspan around, 6.5, 7 feet. And if you look at the mass, wing length, wingspan, body length. And those metrics, it's about 20 to 40%, 50% bigger than a bald eagle.
Wow.
So they are massive. And while we were waiting for the tramway, you're already up a little bit from the valley floor that you take by car, and then the tramway will take you up there. And while we're waiting, it was just like raptor heaven.
Hmm.
And so we had a lot of long-legged buzzards. In England, which gives us our English names to these, in the UK, they call our booty hawks or booty hawks. We call them hawks, they call them buzzards. In Germany, they call them bussard. And so they're not vultures, they're essentially booty hawks. This one has some black patches under its wings that you can't see in this photo, but it kind of reminded me of a rough-legged hawk. It's kind of, when I see one, I'm like, does it look like a rough-leg? Okay, it's a long-legged buzzard. When you're around here and you see one of those middle guys dart over, you have an identification problem. Was it a Sharpie or was it a Cooper's? Or if you're really lucky, maybe it was a goshawk. But usually you kind of eliminate goshawk, or it's just not really a possibility where you are. And so you constant debates, people posting. I mean, if you go to one of those ID Facebook pages, probably about half the pages are, is this a Cooper or a Sharpie? Then you don't have a problem, at least in Germany, you just have Eurasian sparrowhawk. We wanted to try and catch and get a Levant sparrowhawk, but we never saw one. But it's about halfway between the size of a Sharpie and a Coop. So it's kind of in the middle ground there. We got to speed up a bit. So, another common bird we saw called a common redstart, again, the repeated name. This is in the Old World flycatcher group. You can kind of see they have a red on the tail that gives them the name, completely unrelated to our redstart, which is a New World warbler. And here's another common thing. This is one of those things around here, you're going to see American pipits. You see a pipit, it's American pipit. Maybe if you go to the Great Plains in the right place at the right time of year, you see a Sprague's pipit. You go to Germany, and then there's like maybe 3 or 4 species, and then you kind of get down into Armenia area, and some there's like pages in the book, and they all look the same. And this one's called a tree pipit, but we saw it in the grass, and there is a meadow pipit, which we didn't see, we wanted to see. So you see it in the grass, maybe it's meadow pipit, no, it's tree pipit. Okay, so then the next morning we got up early, and we went to a place called Kinzoresk, which is just, oh, I love that place.
So before I talk about this, back there we have some books and booklets and whatever, and one of them is our much mutilated Birds of Armenia book, mutilated because it had a lot of pages that basically just praised themselves for making the book. So those I took out to lighten my weight, but the rest of it, you can see those pages and pages that he's talking about. So Old Hanzoresk, the part of it, the word means apple, but I don't know what apple village or whatever, was actually an ancient cave city where, starting from the 10th century, people dug into those cliffs and made this is what it looked like at some point, probably in 19th century. So they would dig into the cliff, make a cave there, and then build a house in front of it. So you could enter the house, it's a regular house, and then you keep going, and suddenly you're inside the mountain. It was huge. It was 8,000 people strong at its heyday, and it was occupied until like 1972 for some reason, even though it was humid there and it was really hard to get there, and I have no idea how. Probably a whole lot of camels and donkeys were involved. They lived there and they were proud of it. So I really wanted to see it. I've never been there. And to get there, can we go to the previous one?
Oh, sure. Okay.
To get there, you really have to. So that's the gorge that, is basically a whole lot of those cliffs are, have been inhabited at some point. You have to cross the swinging bridge, which is the longest swinging bridge I've ever crossed. I don't know. And it's really, really high above the gorge. So here is a 360 view.
If you look carefully, you can just see those caves just dotted all over the place.
So when they finally moved out of there into a newly built proper, quote-unquote, village, they took those house fronts with them a lot of times. They just disassembled with them. But that's...
For the bridge, you want that map?
Probably went down and up, yeah. Yeah.
A minute probably to go all the way
with a
down
donkey
and then
or
all the way
something.
back up.
Yeah.
And in order to get to the bridge, you have to walk about, I don't know, 300 steps down too.
That gives you
So
a
way
sense of
back there in the
length of
upper
it.
left, you can see the stair.
Huh.
So we
Yeah.
walked them down and then of course we had to walk them back up
And
again.
this is all stairs
Yep.
right back up here.
Yep. Another view of the cliffs with the caves, a view for out of the cave, and that thing on the right is actually on oil press, which they showed us, and on the left they have one of the caves was turned into sort of a museum where they collected a whole lot of artifacts to show people. Birds.
We had white wagtails everywhere we saw, but they were at the end of the breeding season still, at the end of August, there were fledglings, and how can you not have cute little fledgling wagtails? This is one place where we got a better photograph of a western rock nuthatch. There's two species, western and eastern. We also saw those in that first gorge that we talked to you about. Unusually, it's perched on a tree, downed tree. Usually you see them on the rocks, even though our nuthatches are strictly arboreal. These guys you see on the ground and on rocks quite a bit. I showed you a booted eagle earlier. This is a dark morph. The other one that was white on the wings. But you can see for an eagle, and it actually is related to golden eagles and those groups. It's actually smaller than a raven. We saw that one chasing. Hey, and another tree pipit. It's not in a tree. What kind of pipit? It's a wire pipit. No, there's no such thing as a wire pipit. But that's another tree pipit we saw. And then this is one of many kestrels we saw. And as we were walking back up the stairs after we had done the tour, this was definitely a target species. This is the bearded vulture lammergeier, and then we had another vulture, the Egyptian vulture, that you can find in that area. The lammergeier, or bearded vulture, is one of the few species in the world that can live off of bone marrow. They're known for flying up high with bones, dropping them onto a rocky area and letting them shatter and then eating the marrow out. So,
So the other one, the Egyptian vulture, it kind of looks angry like so many other birds. Fun fact, in Russian, when you want to, call a woman a name, that's what you call her.
yeah.
It's a really mean woman.
So we kind of skip a day here because we were traveling and just for time. So we couple of days traveling, and then we went to Lake Sevan, which is obviously the largest natural lake in Armenia. The lake itself is about 1,900 meters, so that's like 6,300 feet, I think. And so it's high up there, and we stopped at several spots along the lake. You already talked about the lower lake level earlier.
I did talk about the lower lake, so this is a general, it does hold distinction, and I don't exactly remember what it's like the largest freshwater something or other, high, whatever. But just to reiterate, now go back, this, what you see there in the middle right, it used to be an island. So the lake was dropped so much during Soviet times that it became a peninsula. And now, even though the water level is rising, they rerouted some rivers and whatever. They almost killed the lake. They killed some, endemic species that lived in there and had to reintroduce them. And it's still a peninsula, albeit there is a lot less, of it showing, but it's still a peninsula. So there's still ways to go. What's up?
Yeah.
We're gonna have to split it in two parts. Because we're starting to run out of time here. Let's go ahead and finish this, and then I guess we'll have to do a second part later. Yeah, how do people want to hang out?
Stop here, we have more to show.
Okay, we'll keep going then. All right. So go ahead, Mariam, you want to talk about this?
Well, we can, this is Roxy birding and yet another, cove there. So these are just to show you what kind of places we birded in near Lake Sevan. And then here are some ducks that you should be able to recognize. They're conspecific with our North American ones.
At least for now. And you can see that shoveler bill on them. There's a lot of migratory birds that we saw were chiffchaffs, mountain chiffchaffs and common chiffchaffs. You can see from the name Philoscopus, phil meaning leaf. These are what they call leaf warblers, one of the old world warbler group. And they're kind of drab. And the chiffchaff name is onomatopoeic, because they sing. And we actually, even though it was late August, early September, we did hear a few of them singing. They they go chiff, chaff, chiff, chaff, chiff, chaff. And in Germany, we call them silpsop, silpsop, silpsop. So I was familiar with the common chiffchaff in Germany, the silpsop. And so I knew that song, but I couldn't tell the difference between these two songs. We had to let Merlin know. And then we took a lot of photos of a lot of stuff and then identified them a week later when we were back, either in the B&B or back home. A wood sandpiper, that's a tringa, kind of like a solitary maybe, or yellow legs. Common snipe, similar to our Wilson snipe. Oh, this one's exciting. Look at the scientific name of that. It's Porzana. Anybody know what species of bird we have around here in the genus Porzana? Sora, yeah. You look at that and you go, oh, it's a Sora. Well, it's the...
Oh, almost. So this was a very exciting find because it was early on migration. It was probably one of the first ones spotted that season, and so we somehow landed in the rare bird alert for the country. But it was a spotted crag. It actually only stops, I think, on migration. And Roxy filmed a little video. This was also an area that used to be dry, and so people started building closer and closer to the lake. And then once the lake was raised, a whole lot of those buildings were flooded. So we were birding actually right next to a big flooded former hotel.
Huh.
Yeah.
And that thing, unlike, Soras, I mean, I've seen Soras do that kind of out at Conant Marsh, but it was just Roxy went down there, she was about maybe 10, 15 feet from it, getting the video. This is a common chiffchaff. If you'll notice, the mountain chiffchaff had kind of a white eyebrow. The bird on the left there has more of a little bit of a white eye ring. And so, although I don't know, Roxy told me when she saw this, she thought it was a mountain chiffchaff, so might be wrong. Another northern wheat ear. Let's see, I think Mariam wanted to say this is another common species, one of the most common birds that I saw in Germany, called a Eurasian blackcap, and it's a Sylvia tree warbler, old world warbler.
The berries, however, are kind of significant because I don't know if anybody ever heard about oh, I just went blank. Sea buckthorn, sorry. Just completely blanked out for a second. Sea buckthorn, and there a lot of it was planted around the lake, I think, to prevent erosion. But those berries actually have 12 times the vitamin C of an orange. So there.
Wow.
And so, however thorny it is, people still harvest it and make all kinds of things on it. Doesn't that bird look like a tiny little gray catbird?
Yeah, like a little mini gray catbird. It's the size of sort of one of our warblers. I should have put down that's a male there. The female has a brown cap. All right, and here's one that I really wanted to see because I never got to see these in Germany. And then since being to PA, the last 9 years, I've been doing marsh bird monitoring for Erie Bird Observatory out at Presque Isle. And so I've been getting up early in the morning and kayaking all the backwaters, documenting least bitterns there. And so this, if you saw that and nobody gave you any context, you would probably say, oh, that's without looking at it really carefully and knowing that somebody was trying to fool you, you'd say, oh, that's a least bittern, but it's called a little bittern. It's the same size. And it's a little more streaky back, but otherwise very similar. And we had one come out and play for us that we got some photos of.
So our cultural experience for that day included visiting the cemetery, which was started in 10th century and is still an active cemetery. But people go there to see these cross stones, hajkars, which are a very typical burial or memorial stone in Armenia. They're hand carved. Each one might take up to a year, sometimes two. No two are the same. A lot of times they're erected to commemorate some event. A lot of these, the cemetery is now the largest depository of them now that, the largest one previously was bulldozed and thrown into a river by people we won't mention. But Some of these have been taken out to the Met, to a British museum, to the
Louvre.
Louvre, and then brought back. And so there are always these willing guides, mostly older women, that want to sell you like a pair of wool socks, but also will show you all around the cemetery, for a little tip and whatever. But it's an amazing place. Oh, and one more thing, when Tamerlan, the Mongolian, what's his name?
Um,
Anyway, invading hordes of
Kublai Khan.
Mongolians were coming. There is a legend that, they put helmets on this and pretended that this was an army, and the Mongolians believed it and sort of retreated a little bit.
So at the end of the day, our goal was to stay in a city called Dilijan. And you can see if you look we have this drier area on the west, and there it's a little higher elevation, a little more mountainous, and you're also more in the northeast, away from Saudi Arabia deserts and more closer to Siberia. And so Dilijan I love that city. Mariam will tell you more about it.
It's very old. It has a lot of history attached to it. They have restored some of the old city, but so obviously we stayed in a lot of good places, but I had to show this one because guys, we stayed at Hobbiton in Villager. There's a Hobbiton there, so it was the most adorable thing. And they had all the decorations and everything.
It's called the Cozy House.
But you can also see just how green it is compared to other areas where it's just rocks, red rocks, gray rock. So Tavush Mars, that's what it's called. The administrative district is the greenest one, because it's kind of closer to the Georgia and that sort of more humid climate.
Oh, you're going to tell a story about this.
Oh, and then, so this was one of our target birds, especially my daughter, Roxy. She really wanted to see a dipper, but we kept dipping on the dipper until.
Yeah, we wanted to see one at that Arpy River place where we were earlier.
Yeah, we were actually in this, kind of scruffy urban park, and we sort of went down to where there was a little stream there, and I think Chris conjured it up.
This looks like a good place for a dipper. He
conjured it up, and then Roxy saw it, and so this was already in the evening, which is why the photo is not quite. But hey, we found a dipper. We were all very, very happy.
And again, the double name, Cinclus cinclus, that's the only dipper in Europe, so we'll call it that. But then we have the dipper, American dipper that we have here. I had seen them in Germany, but it's just still one of my favorite birds. If it weren't unethical, I would want to introduce them here.
We didn't let him steal that one and bring it over. So the next morning we got up early and drove a little bit to get to start our trek from this monastery and of course the obligatory dog.
Looks like Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And our we were gonna walk through the forest to a waterfall. So just a little bit of that's where the waterfall is. It sort of goes around the rock crevices, so it's hard to see the whole thing all at once, but it's green and mossy, and it was a good walk. And then we returned to the monastery again. There is Chris next to an 800-year-old tree
that she was able to hug as a kid.
Yeah, that tree was still standing when I was a kid. I have many, many photos with it, but recently was hit by lightning. But it was a really, really old oak. Yet another Hachkar there. So, and the birds. So, now suddenly we have forest birds, like the robin, European robin, which, should have been in Mary Poppins, but instead they had the American robin.
So of the species we saw there, I think 87 of them were not lifers for me. Because I lived in Germany, and here suddenly we're in an area where all these birds were common in Germany. Common redstarts we saw before, chaffinch, one of the most common birds in Germany. European blackbird, notice the genus name is Turdus. What's the Turdus bird that looks like here? American robin, Turdus migratoris. And so they're like robins in Germany. They're on every single lawn. There's another Eurasian bee-eater flying by. The Eurasian crag martin, we saw them flying around, and then Mariam noticed some of them flying in the building, and you can't really see this when you're just watching them, but in the photo you can see that it's got some insects in its mouth. And
so in fact they were flying into, what is it called, a refectory?
Refectory, yeah.
Refectory, yeah, which is, where the monks gather together to eat. And I guess they keep those doors open old age for the birds because there is a nest there, and you can see if you look carefully that the young actually pops out to receive the food. There you
And
go.
this was, you can see the date, maybe 2nd of September, I think, 31st.
Yeah, pretty late in the
I think it's the
season.
2nd of September.
So a lot of these monasteries, something that I didn't mention before, were destroyed at some point in during their existence by fire or earthquake or invading army or whatever, and then rebuilt. So this one, whoever decided to rebuild this, put a glass roof on it. Don't ask me. But apparently it worked for the birds, so they have a little bit of daylight there. They built a nest.
So the next day we wanted to head more northwest, close to the Georgian and Turkey borders to some mountainous areas there. And so on the way, Mariam wanted to, and so you can see that we kind of really didn't see, we kind of skipped the very southern part. I would have loved to have seen more Tavush. We kind of just got in there to get a sense of it. And, you know, that's the area that in a sense it made sense that we skip this because this is kind of the most like Pennsylvania or Germany. And really this was all new to me.
Make sure he agrees to another trip.
We got another trip already planning. Oh, sorry.
And so again, I studied some guides, people recommendations, etc. And this was one of the areas that was recommended for some unique birds. And good thing we did too. This is a 360 of what it looked like. Again, this is probably 6:30 in the morning. It's between two mountain ranges. Pambak is the one that's
The north, I think.
this one,
Yeah.
and then yeah, there's different mountain range across from the valley. But it's just this beautiful, beautiful place, especially early in the morning. And so cows again. I had to put that lower right photo because
That's our car. That's our
that's
rental.
our rental car, and as soon as we saw that, Roxy turned to me and said, "I think they want you to move that car."
Oh,
And yay, we saw blue throat. That was one of my, and this is a female, so she doesn't have that spectacular shiny blue babe that the males have, but I'm still super happy that we saw her. And of course, this is sort of a grassland. It's a valley, so grassland birds, rosefinch here, and obligatory. Which shrike is this? Oh no, that was a windchat. Sorry. And then we found one of the most sought after birds on migration, which is the wryneck. If you haven't heard about wryneck, this is a Eurasian bird that is related to woodpeckers, but it has this weird thing that it does with the neck to look more like a snake, almost like an anhinga. So we didn't get a video, unfortunately, but if you look at
they can rotate like their heads like 300 degrees, like
not
an
only
owl.
that, they sort of stretch it sideways and do this thing,
weird. Yeah,
just to scare predators away, I guess. So we immediately posted an alert in the local birding chat.
Yeah. So then we continued on, and our target was the city of Gyumri, and it's the second largest city in Armenia. I never give you a sense of the size of Yerevan. Yerevan's about 1.5 million people. So it's maybe kind of the size of Pittsburgh metro area, a little bit smaller than that, but it's definitely much bigger than, say, Erie or something like that. This area of Gyumri and the surrounding area was really hard hit in the earthquake of 1988. Yeah, somewhere 88 that devastated that area, and tens of thousands of people died. But what makes it interesting is the architecture means that a lot of that really ugly Soviet architecture got knocked down and they were able to rebuild.
Well, it got knocked down because it was shoddy, but they also, so this is the pre-Soviet, this is colonial, basically, when Armenia was under Tsarist Russia. That's the style that you see here, but this is one of the main, a pedestrian promenade. So also in Gyumri, we met, I talked to some of you about how Armenia, now hosts a whole lot of Ukrainians and Russians that departed their country due to certain geopolitical events. So Ksenia here, I started chatting with her on Facebook when I was preparing for the trip. She's Polish-Ukrainian, and she now lives in Gyumri, and she's a herpetologist, so she studies geckos, actually. So she moved to Armenia to continue studying geckos, and she's preparing her PhD, but she's also an excellent birder, excellent. And she knows that town. After living there for a year and a half, she knows it better than probably some of the natives, especially where to find the birds. So we hooked up with her and she showed us some really good spots for birding in Gyumri.
One thing that I'm guessing she speaks like 6 languages: Polish, Ukrainian, Russian. She's pretty good at Armenian, from what they said, even though she's only lived there for a while. English, Spanish, Greece, maybe Greek. Yeah, English and Greek. And so it was interesting because when she called out birds, she didn't want to have to learn the names of the birds in like 6 different languages. And obviously, if she learned these in Polish, that's not going to mean anything to us. So she called out birds by their scientific names. That's just her habit. And so then suddenly we were scrambling to learn the scientific.
Biologist.
Yeah, she's also a biologist. And so that was her way of communicating. And so most of them I could figure out pretty quickly, but some of them, like, which species was that, etc. The fun male European goldfinch, another double name, Cordulus cordulus. Our goldfinch, the American goldfinch and the lesser goldfinch in the West, they were formerly in the bird books when I was growing up and learning birds, they were in that same genus. But the American goldfinch was Cordulus tristis, now it's Spinus tristis. And so they were thought to be basically closely related. They're still in the same family and everything. But as you can see, that one's got the splash of red. This is the old world flycatcher family, so they're not related at all to our empids, although they're kind of a nondescript grayish little bird, the spotted sandpiper or spotted flycatcher. One thing that was nice about birding with Ksenia and the fact that she knew the town and the birds, she was able to know exactly where there were some European hobbies that had nested there earlier in the year. And so we got to see them engaging in some aerial battles with the Eurasian kestrels. And so you can see the head looks like a peregrine, but they're smaller. They're about a little bit smaller, about our kestrel size. These Eurasian kestrels are actually about maybe 20% bigger than ours. And they're very tame, and they're a city bird. So, if you're in downtown Erie or you're in Meadville or whatever, you don't expect to see your American kestrels in town. When I lived in Germany, we had a pair that would regularly just perch on a little windowsill right outside our bedroom window when I lived there. And so they're tame there. And there's a lesser kestrel, which we were excited to see because that was a lifer for me. And there it is chasing the Eurasian hobby. Then we headed up there, the last morning we were there up to Lake Arpey, which is right, and you'll tell them. Sorry.
I was going to add that that
Oh,
was
for-
yet another
yeah.
location, all those kestrels and hobbies and stuff. It was yet another location where it was like, don't look that way, because this time there was a Russian military installation there, which, fortunately Armenia still friends with Russia. And so we do have at least a couple of them still left there. And that was one of the, don't point your binoculars this way, please.
Here.
Yeah, oh, so this is me. So, still with Ksenia, she was very happy that we had a car and offered her a seat. The next morning, we went to Lake Arpey, which is even farther north from Gyumri, right in the corner there between Turkey and Georgia. And so the first thing, can you go one back, please? So the first thing that happened there, again, was in Armenia to have somebody who speaks fluent Armenian, as soon as we parked, so a couple of uniformed policemen coming over our way. Hey guys, and they introduced themselves and they're like, well, this here dam is a military object, so please, again, don't take photos of the dam. And I said, well, honestly, I cannot.
We were
of the dam,
basically like a mile and a half from Georgia, but especially
Yeah.
a mile and a half from Turkey.
But also, I think they just evaluated us. They saw two obvious foreigners and two people who, speak Armenian, but at least one of them doesn't really look Armenian. And so they were like, okay, well, fine, you can go. And I said, we are only interested in birds. This happened several times. And birds.
There you go.
This is one I like to see because I looked for this bird in Germany and I only saw it a couple times in all the years I lived and visited there. This is an immature, I forgot to put immature. This is an immature European honey buzzard. And so it's not a boodio, but they eat ants and honey. Then we had a lot of buntings up there on migration. The one on the left, you can see it has a huge bill that makes it easy to see it's a corn bunting. And then we had ortolans and black-headed, all closely related. This is one of these things where there's pages of them. They're not related to our indigo bunting or painted bunting. Those are a New World family. This is an Old World family.
So the bird on the lower right, by the way, I don't know if you guys heard, many of you probably have, they're a delicacy in France.
Yeah.
Ask me why. But they eat them.
Yeah, there's illegal trappers and a market for them and everything, and especially I think in like southeast France, in migration, sometimes they bust people with like thousands of these birds. This is the Eurasian linnet. It's related to goldfinches and that stuff, and there were large flocks of them there. Here we have a black kite, not really closely related, but an obvious raptor. Northern western marsh harrier, jackdaw, which is related to crows, and the corvid family. And then we have another tree pipit, but this one's on a rock. So maybe it's a rock pipit, which is one that we actually, I think, no, we didn't see rock pipits. We saw water pipits, but I don't think it was in the water. Anyway, so it's a tree pipit. Yeah, that's one where we just took photos of them. And then Roxy did a lot of the legwork on going through photos and asking about them.
Well, once we finally got to the lake, of course, all the wanderers were there. And I, as a photographer, find it really fun when the background is actually not just the empty blue sky, but like, say, mountains like this. There were two kinds of pelicans there. So Dalmatian pelicans flying this way, great white pelicans flying that way. And these guys are not the same white pelicans that we have here.
We have American
whites, they're different. But and then this one, the cranes, I really always wanted to see common cranes. And that was Roxy took that very zoomed in photo, the previous one, and I took one of the flock flying. Well, we heard them first, and they did sound like
sandhills. Yeah.
Our sandhills, yeah.
I mean, it was unmistakable. I mean, we knew it was not a sandhill crane, but it's like you hear it's like, oh, there's cranes, and it's pretty much got to be that species.
For a lot of these birds, this was just a migration stopover. So here's a whole flock of immature black-crowned nighthawk, for example, and an even bigger flock of reddish ducks.
So then we picked up from Gilmery and headed down to a place the next morning, early morning, called Varticlaw Reservoir. And again, we got there and a uniformed person.
So this wanted to know what we're there for. This is the place. This one is of course an artificial reservoir, not a naturally. So I was so spruced up to that early in the morning. I'm sure he hated us for the fact that he had to put his.
He had to get up, yes, and walk across.
But he wanted to know what they were there for, and then he said, "Well, the place you park your car is not really a good place. Why don't you repark? But for that, I'll show you how to get down to the lake," and he did. So it was all good. And this is a zoomed in photo of that early morning sort of perspective. I just wanted you to see all those years that we saw. And again, a good body of water for migratory birds, because there were over 20 of these flight habitats, which are not the same, but they're related to our American habitats. And more reddish ducks this time close up. And black kite, and I think we saw a red kite there too. Right?
No, we didn't. I got excited.
Yeah, Chris got really excited, but I guess
it was not a red kite, no.
And a pallet terrier, which was exciting.
Yeah, that was the first one.
Was a new species,
and that was one we didn't realize it at the time. We that was post identified.
You can see it actually has that sort of owlish face that our northern harrier has, so kind of similar.
They have, let's see, we saw Western Marsh Harrier, they have Pollard Harrier, Montague's Harrier, which we looked for, we thought we had seen, but then we decided we didn't see it. They have Hen Harrier, which for a while was considered conspecific with our Marsh Harrier. It was considered same species, but that's split now. And I think there's even another species or two down in that area. So another cultural stop here. I'll let Mariam tell you about that.
This one is one of the oldest one we've seen, and this one has not been renovated yet, so still ruined from, I believe there was an earthquake in maybe like 16th century. But there was also a cemetery nearby, and in the cemetery, this got closed for us for quite some time, actually. And was this the new speech? I think this was.
I think this was, I thought this was the only time we saw one of these.
And we were already on the way south, heading toward the city. So, yeah. So the next stop was a cousin of mine actually has a summer house on the slopes of Mount Aragats, which is now the highest mountain, actually in Armenia.
You can see this is about 2,000 meters up, so that's about 6,500 feet, I think, something.
So we spent the night there, and I like his property because it has a whole lot of, browse to do there. You can just go out and find some food. Very fun. So there were actually, I already ate all the ripe blackberries, that's why they're all red. And then early in the morning, next day, we decided to take a day off. We realized that we were running
Out of
sort of,
steam.
very, we're getting sort of very tired just by birding every morning, for over 2 weeks now. And so we decided to take a bit of a break, but of course my daughter and I just couldn't sleep in. So we got up early in the morning, left Chris at home to nap, and went out, and good thing too, because this Eurasian sparrowhawk was actually taking a little dip in the puddle right by their house. So we took some photos. And
Oh,
yeah, go ahead.
so the Eurasian tree sparrow on the left there, that's the species that was introduced into St. Louis in 1870. And then it never really spread because the house sparrows were introduced in the US in 1850. And so I grew up about, maybe 20 miles from the introduction point, and my sister bought a house in 1983 about 10 miles, 15 miles from where they were introduced in St. Louis. And for 20 years, I never saw a Eurasian tree sparrow at her house when I would visit. And then one time I was visiting about 2003, 2004, and suddenly there were just Eurasian tree sparrows. This is the most common bird in her yard now. She has a flock of about 30 of them. But for a long time, had to go to St. Louis. Now you can go to Iowa, Mississippi River, Western Illinois, and find them. And then that rose finch, we showed you a female on an earlier slide. On this slide, you can look at it and you can say, oh, it's like a house finch or a purple finch, which our ones are now in a different genus, but in the bird books I was using when I was learning birding, they placed our house finch and purple finch were in that genus Carpodacus, and it kind of, so it looks similar to them. This is a garden warbler. It's an old world tree warbler, Sylvia warbler, wood warbler. And the bill looks completely different, but it kind of skulks. It's kind of hard to see. It's kind of a gray, non-field mark bird. And it kind of, they call it a garden grasmücke in Germany, which means garden warbler basically. And to me, whenever I glance up one and see one, and especially hearing them, their song reminded me of a warbling vireo. So I kind of like this similar sort of situation. And hey, guess what we also saw there? A tree pipit, and it was in a tree. So there you have it. We saw a tree pipit finally in a tree. So then we headed up from there, up the slopes of Aragats, which is like another 800 meters, I think, higher than where we were there. But this is our highest elevation. I was a little bit worried because I have some health issues that I was worried about being up at high elevation. And after we were up there for a morning, we were kind of feeling, that sort of high elevation thing. Because this is over 10,000 feet here.
I guess I should have included a photo of him napping under a tree.
Yeah,
So my daughter and I have been to the lowest. So, okay, back up. Mount Aragats is a volcano that at some point in the past exploded and split into 4 parts. So there are 4 summits and a crater in the middle. And so I have hiked to one of the lowest.
That's the top summit right there.
It almost killed me, to be honest, huh?
I think that's the top summit right there. And then
Yeah.
that left one is
So
like
the northern
second
summit, the highest one, you need a gear to hike there. The southern one, you can walk there, but you have to have good lungs and a good heart. And this lake is on the slopes of the southern summit. That thing over there you see, whatever you might think it is, it's not. It's a guardian of the water source. These things have been erected by pagan, pre-Christian Armenians, and they're called dragon stones. And so they have been erected at the sort of the water source of the garden. So because we're in an alpine area, I just wanted to show you what the vegetation there looks like just a bit. And here are the birds.
So again, Eurasian kestrels were just everywhere. This one was cutely posing, kind of preening its foot. Yeah, it's a little manicure. And then, hey, we got another pipit species. It's a water pipit, but it's on a rock. It's not a rock pipit, it's a water pipit. And then we had up there was a really good place for the species called a twite. It's the same genus as that linnet we saw earlier. Kind of a grayish, nondescript bird, but there were flocks of like 30 or 50 of them went fly over. And just because there were wagtails everywhere, and why not another wagtail? The next slide is one that all three of us, I mean, we would have paid money to see this thing. In Lake Arpey, we were told that one of the old buildings up there, a stone wall building, that a few months before, Kari Lake, yeah, did I say Arpey? Sorry, Kari Lake. We were told somebody had seen one of these like a month before, maybe. So I'll let Mariam tell you about it. Of course, we dipped.
So yeah, so this is a wall creeper, and that same Xenia that we met earlier in Gyumri, she had been to that spot, and they were breeding in a half-built abandoned hotel. And just really briefly, you know, because the country has gone through so many iterations, right? It was Soviet, and it was independent, and there was a war, and there was an earthquake, and there was all kinds of things. There are a lot of unfinished buildings all glittering the countryside. For various reasons, people just never finished building them. And so it was one of them on the slopes of Mount Aragats, was intended as a hotel, never finished. It was supposed to be looking fancy, but it didn't. And so this guy's actually utilized it for breeding in those crevices. And we had such high hopes. We sat there for over 40 minutes just looking for any signs of them. Didn't see them, but hey, they're on a postage stamp, so I just decided to put that instead, just to tell you how we did on this.
Next trip, maybe, hopefully, cross your fingers.
So bad.
So we're pretty much almost done here. On our way back to Yerevan, we had one more cultural stop, and then probably the biggest surprise of the trip. We stopped at a place called Svartnots Temple, or what's it called? Cathedral, Svartnots.
It's also never been restored. It was the only one in Armenia that anybody knows of that was round. It's amazing architecturally. If anybody is into architecture, talk to me. Mount Ararat behind it. So it was super hot already. It was afternoon. We just walked there,
tired.
looked at it. Oh, this is wonderful. Okay, let's go somewhere find shade. And then as we are leaving, all of a sudden Chris goes, "What the hell?" And so
Yeah, I was sitting in the car when we were getting ready to view it, and this car pulled up, and a woman was sitting there for a while, and she got out and didn't think anything of it. And then we were kind of walking in the hot sun, and we were kind of exploring the temple grounds for about 40 minutes. And then I get back to the car, and I know the car's still sitting there. And I walk by, and there's the Meadville Palmero sticker, if you look right there. And what are the odds of that? We parked right next to them too. And this cathedral kind of, you know, out there. And so a couple of hypotheses. One is that a person from Meadville bought the car from Palmero. Well, somebody did. Our area. And maybe that person from Meadville moved to Armenia. That seems kind of unlikely. It's possible that the person bought it and then moved, or maybe sold it to somebody else, and then that person moved to Armenia. Probably the most likely hypothesis is that this car was in a wreck, got slightly dinged up, enough that it was totaled by the insurance company, because you want to get things fixed, you know, just fixing a bumper is like a couple $1,000s now. But the labor in Armenia is cheaper. And so you can actually squeeze that price difference. People can buy totaled cars here on the relative cheap, actually ship them over there, pay a bunch of guys, a crew to repair them, and then sell them over there and still make a little bit of money. And that's probably what happened. That's what we're guessing.
States that look for cars that can be easily repaired overseas and then ship them over. It's a known thing among the.
I wish we would have had more time to wait for that one to come back.
But the odds That the one man probably in Armenia who's from Meadville and the one car from Meadville, just so
In Armenia, maybe.
were next to each other for a moment in time. I mean,
Uh-huh.
mathematically speaking, it should have been impossible, but there it is.
So we took one more trip. You'll see that line in the middle when we were in Yerevan for a few more days at the end. We took one more trip to Lake Sevan. But we decided not to include any photos from that. And so that is everywhere we drove. You can see that we explored the whole country. We got to all 11 Marses. But that's like, from here to Pittsburgh and back. And everywhere in between. And think about all the diversity and different things we saw. It's kind of mind blowing thinking of that. Actually, it's more like because it's
From here to Maryland.
no, it's more like from here to Gettysburg. I actually measured it.
Okay.
But and then on the right, you can see every red mark there is where we submitted a checklist at a hotspot. And then the blue marks where we submitted an eBird checklist at our own newly created personal location. That number down there, we had 158, 159, 157. Every time I discovered just looking through the photos, the white whiskered tern. We didn't have it on our list, and I was looking at, oh, what's that?
And we haven't even seen all the photos.
Yeah, we're still going through them. So that may go up. On the other hand, there's other things that we're looking at them, and oh no, we submitted to the Facebook Armenian birds page, and they go, no, that's not what it is. And so that number is in flux. For me, I had about 70 lifers. 87 of them were ones I'd seen before in Germany. And so I had about 70 lifers, and you had
81.
81, and Roxy.
In Germany.
I asked Roxy,
Yeah, she had like.
she had like
80 or
80,
something.
yeah, something like 89, something like that, 88. 68 checklists, and about 15 days of birding, so about 4.5 maybe checklists per day of birding. Just a slide of some of the, I'll let Mariam.
So, while this was about birds were not the only things we saw. If anybody is into butterflies, again, ask me about butterflies. There are a lot of them in Armenia. Obviously, lizards and frogs and whatnot, but also there was this one spot on the way to Dilijan where there's an observation there, and it's a known spot for mountain goats or ibex called Bezoar goats. And we did not include one of our photos because it was Digiscope and it was horrible.
Early morning, foggy.
Little pinprick on the photo, but there were some females with young. These are actually what the males look like up there. And it was just absolutely amazing experience nonetheless, even though we hardly saw them. It was just waiting there early in the morning.
Yeah.
They're coming down the mountain. It was great. It was wonderful.
So.
And we're finally done. So, any questions?
Is it possible to drive from one end of the country to the other end of the country in a day?
Oh,
Is that
yeah,
really-
and back.
The road looked really windy, and I thought, well.
Well, if you took
Okay.
any road you could get to. from
So,
Dillard
here is a good answer to your question. If you're taking the highway only, if you're not veering off the highway, you can drive there and back in the same day. And then drive there again.
Highway that goes across.
There are highways, and he'll show you, I'm sure he likes maps, so. But if you go as much as, 3 meters over or, 10 feet off the highway, all of a sudden there'll be potholes and rocks and washboards and cows and all sorts of, don't do that.
7 hours.
You'll never get there.
Now, these are the main roads, so this is without burning stops, being on, major roads, paved roads. Some of them are 4 lanes. We were on some of these stretches. We saw a lot of Iranian trucks with
coming
Iranian
through,
license
yeah.
plates, because that's kind of the farthest south you can go, is that town on the Iranian border. And so 7 hours, 46 minutes.
The infrastructure has been greatly improved too. There have been tunnels dug under the mountains, so where there was like this switchbacks, there's now a tunnel and the roads have been built. So
But 7 hours 46 minutes on those roads. Okay, one thing we didn't talk about is how people drive. Okay, she did all the driving. Roxy and I got international driver's licenses in case we need to give her a spell. But Mariam ended up doing all the driving because when you're driving down a road and it's 2 lanes and something in the way or a slower car, even if it's double yellow line, person behind will just go past them. And if you're oncoming, you get on that very edge of the shoulder of the car they're passing, and there's just enough room for that car to scoot between. Now, I must have seen that a dozen times, people passing us, oncoming cars passing, and it's like, whoa, Mariam would get over to the right, it's car, she couldn't, that person would just go right in
So
between.
basically.
They have no patience.
But
They have
there's
no
no
patience.
options to drive on those roads.
They see something up front, they just go around. But I was thinking about risk, the congestion, the road rules, whatever.
Gets the adrenaline pumping.
But, yeah,
Yes.
You said the police intercepted you a few times just by telling you not to photograph something.
Yeah.
Did they give you any worse trouble than that? Like show me your passport, come out to
No.
the station?
no,
It won't any.
no, I never felt threatened at all.
Look,
But
they're getting in and I just talked them out of their, down from their tree and they're like, oh, yeah, you know, just do
I have
whatever.
a feeling in all those situations, the worst they would do is just tell us that we couldn't be there.
Yeah.
And-
Maybe they just recognize the fact that we're, harmless,
Yeah,
but they are being very vigilant.
Yeah.
because-
They just fought a war.
They have many reasons to be vigilant.
yeah. But I was gonna also say just this theme of us going to a spot and either somebody is helping us out, police showing up and, helping us out really. The guard at the, car hunch, telling us where to go into the finish. The older women at the, North Cemetery. There were a lot of other places where, at the swinging bridge, there was a guy that showed up there. Now, a lot of people, they're kind of expecting a tip, and that's how they make their money, is because rather than you sign up for a guide, they just kind of hang out, and then, some of them, there was a couple places where we were gonna go on a hike at the Haggertson Monastery in the deciduous forest near Dillajan, where there was some guys that looked a little aggressive, just kind of hanging out, they might give you a hard time until Mariam stared at them. They let go off. But most of them were very friendly, and I mean, it's just every place we had somebody to show us some things or to offer, we turned those guys down.
Moreover, they even opened the restaurant for us when it was closed, or kept it open when it was about to close, or the owner would come to cook for us when these people already got home. I mean, it's that kind. Okay.
And Yerevan, being in the city, is very, very densely populated. And I felt very safe there, safer than I have in there. I mean, I'm sure there's bad areas, but we didn't just like go to one little safe spot. We went all around the downtown area the first 2 days and the last couple of days, often in the evening. And I really, I never saw, there was only one time I saw somebody looked a little shady. Oh, I thought maybe they were, had some deal going on, but I never felt like I saw anybody that was gonna pop me over the head. And in the evening when we were out, for one thing, okay, so it's like 75 degrees in the morning. It's dry, so it's cool a little bit. But once you get to like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, it's getting into 95, 97, 100 degrees. And so then in the evening, once the sun goes down, it starts cooling off fairly fast. And those people, everywhere we went, whether it was a weekday or a weekend or whatever, there was nightlife, just people walking around, the stores would be open. And so I noticed a lot of young women, sometimes in packs, but also alone, all dolled up, maybe like 20, kind of looking like a Kardashian. And I thought, if they're,
I was hoping that Kardashian would.
we're not, sorry. And I thought, well, if they feel safe walking around by themselves, it's probably pretty safe. That's not to say that a lot of Armenian men are total sexist pigs, kind of in a different way. Yeah, we had some interesting things there.
Where did you stay? Did you stay out in bed and breakfast or that?
So, I planned the trip,
Well,
and
everybody get around themselves.
And it was an undertaking because, we've moved so much around because there were, 3 of us plus, for part of the trip, my cousin joined us, so I had to find a place for 3 bedrooms because I had to research all that. But, so we stayed in Airbnbs and hotel, twice we stayed in the hotels, the rest of the time were Airbnbs, and once we stayed at my cousin's house, that was it. And, you know, so that there are ways, easy ways to find the lodgings there, and if you read the reviews, you know, most of them were just wonderful. Yeah.
So the pricing was reasonable?
It's cheaper than you would expect here, so, funny you ask. After, you know, the war, Ukraine war started, and so many people started, you know, the whole exodus started, and a lot of people came in Armenia, and the real estate prices went up, because they were renting or buying. Now they're going down, I mean, so we sort of hit like the downslope already, and it was quite good. Any other questions? And if you're interested, I can tell you exactly what they.
I'm trying to find the photo that I took of the elevator in the first place.
Oh, gosh, yeah, well, again, if you want some reminiscences of former Soviet time, yeah. I think we ran way over time, so I don't want to keep everybody
Yeah.
on.
So
But-
I can't find it, but the first place we stayed at in Yerevan was this old Soviet building. They have Khrushchevskas that were built in the Khrushchev era. Stalinkas, which were built in the Stalin era. Brezhnevskas that were that was a Brezhnev stuff. And they all kind of have a unique style, but they're all kind of that dreary. Anyway, so the first place we stayed in, it was advertised as has an elevator, right? So we got big luggage that we took with us, and we get there, and to get to the elevator, a lot of places, the elevator stops between floors. And then there is a half stairway that goes down or up to a floor up or down that you want to get to. So we see, you know, elevator, we get in there with all these bags and you gotta go up a half a stairway. Then you go up, then you get the elevator and you go up half a floor above where you want to go to because you want to carry those bags down on the next half floor. So you get out of the elevator and the elevator looks like something you're gonna get stuck in and wonder, you know, try to self-help or you're gonna.
I really enjoyed sort of seeing the country where I grew up through his I think it was doing a lot of fun.
Through my
I
eyes,
don't even know that.
yeah.
But the elevator, it was about probably the size of
Thank you for sharing this.
Yeah. My pleasure.
So we'll do this again in a couple of years. We might have other places in between. Southwest US, Costa Rica. Where else do we want to go? Bucket list.
Thank you for coming, everyone.
Thank you for coming. Yeah, we're really glad. Yeah, we knew it was gonna run over and we kept trying to cut things out and speed up, but it was a fun trip.